I'm confident. Oh, it doesn't turn over. What have I forgot? In the last video, the decision was unanimous. The 2.5 engine is come out of the Octavia VRS. It's sat right there, and we're going to be stripping it back down, building it back up, and putting it back in the RSQ3. So that means we need to get the Octavia VRS out. And we got to get the RSQ3 in. And guys, if you haven't seen already, my Audi RS4 Carbon Black is now on competeforcars.co.uk. You can win this car for just £1.99. Now, this is a super rare car, HPI clear. It's an exclusive colour, which is Sprint Blue. I've only seen 1 or 2 RS4s in an exclusive colour and none in Sprint Blue, so this will be a very rare car. It's fully spec'd with adaptive cruise control, it's got panoramic roof, it's got comfort and sound pack, it's got sports pack, it's got absolutely everything. It's got 360 cameras, high beam assist, matrix LED lights. I'm sorry it's dirty, but I'm just using it at the moment as a daily, and I will continue to do so until one of you guys wins it for just a couple of quid. Carbon interior everywhere. There's the 360 cameras, look. HPI clear, as I said, 2 keys, full book pack, absolutely perfect daily car. So go grab your tickets, guys. I'll put the link in the description, just £1.99. Now, before this was even an option, this engine, it is actually a completely different engine code to the engine that came out of the RSQ3, that one here. So this is an actual CZG engine, CZGB this engine is, and that was originally in the pre-facelift 8V Audi RS3, so the 2015 to 2017 car. I'm not sure if they did fit it in the RSQ3 at a later date or not, but this engine here, the one that's broken, is actually, the engine code will be on here, look. This is a CTS engine. Now, as far as I can see, the CTS I didn't even know existed, and it only went in the RSQ3 early doors. And also, which I didn't know, it's the 310 horsepower. Now, I thought that was a typo, because I'd never heard of a 310 horsepower 2.5 cylinder engine until I bought this car. So the CEP engine, CEP8 went in the 8P RS3, and the CEP-B went in the TTRS first generation. So this seems to have a completely different engine all on its own. So I needed to make sure that these 2 engines were going to be compatible with the car, the ECU, and all the ancillaries. And this is where I spoke to Ricky at RE Performance. He's helped me out massively over the last couple of months, or actually probably a year or so actually. And I spoke to him on the phone for a good 10-15 minutes about whether these engines would be compatible swapping everything over. And he's also got a YouTube channel as well. I'm going to stick the link in the description, so go check them out too. Now, it does turn out there are a few differences between the block and the block on the CZGB and the CTSA, but none of these should affect the running of the car. I think the small end bearing, the bearing that goes between the conrod and the piston is slightly larger on this car, but that doesn't actually affect the piston size or anything like that. They seem to be exactly the same. Now, the main things we need to make sure are correct are the injectors, the variable valve timing, the camshafts, because they are the things that are going to affect the running. So we need to make sure all that is the same. So when the car fires up, the ECU sending the correct fuel, correct timing, and the engine will then run the same. Luckily, everything like that, the injectors are all the same, camshafts are the same part numbers, variable valve timings are the right same part numbers. So everything should be good. We couldn't find anything that we're going to throw a spanner in the works. So full steam ahead. Let's strip this back down to what that one looked like, and then start building it back up with all those parts. Now, I'm not going to go into too much detail about stripping down this one because I've done it already and I don't want to bore you to death. Now, click in the top right corner and go and watch the strip down of the original engine from the RSQ3 if you want to see more. But I'm just going to have nice, peaceful music for this one. Right, I'm now just about stripped down as far as I need to go, and you can see, look, there's just wiring looms, parts, absolutely everywhere. It's, yeah, there's a lot going on. Right, yeah, as I said, I've got down to all the parts that I think I need to replace the last one. I've just had to remove the oil filter housing here because we need to remove this oil control valve, because if you look here, look, this one is broken. So we just need to take the one out of the RSQ3's block and put that in there. That would be the last thing we need to do, because annoyingly I had to make this mess. Then the oil filter housing can go all back on. I've checked this coolant pump here. It's the same part number. There's nothing that seems to be actually damaged on this. So I think this is good to go, because it looks a bit of a pain in the arse to change that. I think that looks good to go. If there's a crack now, there's a crack in it. Oh, there's going to be a crack in it, isn't there? Do I just change it? I might take it off the block of the RSQ3 just to see how easy it comes off, and then replace it, because there's just going to be a hairline crack in it, isn't there? I can see it coming already. I'll look at that. But I've left the inlet manifold on, or one stage of it anyway. All our injectors are still in place, so there's no point disturbing that. They are all the same. I've checked all part numbers of remaining things. Everything seems to be the same. So we are at a point now where I can start building up the engine from the RSQ3's, the old engine from the RSQ3. So yeah, I'm going to put it on another time lapse, because you've seen this a couple of times before now. Any problems I come across, I shall chirp in, but I'm just going to see if I can just change that actually. So yeah, I couldn't get the little water pump out of the block on the other one. I just checked elsewhere and it says, yeah, just remove that bolt, and yeah, just pull it out, no worries. That wasn't happening. I don't want to damage anything, so I'm just going to leave it in situ. There is a seal in there, it does say to replace as well, which I don't have. I have had a good look around this. I can't see any cracks in it at all. So I'm just going to have to hope for the best on this and hope that is okay. So we're all ready to go. I have just replaced my oil valve, the first thing we've replaced from the old engine. So we are good to go there. Now, I was just checking the oil filter housing. I don't even know why I decided to check it. I just thought I would. And I'm glad I did, because as you can see, look, they are actually quite different. And so the connection to the block is exactly the same. The oil filter, the oil cooler is exactly the same. But if you look at the housing, you can see that the angle of the new one is completely different to the old one. Now, I've set them up so they're both in the same position they would be if they were bolted to the block. And you can just see the angle difference there. Now, I've just had a look back at my one of the other videos, and I do think that that is going to be a problem with some of the wiring brackets. I think that's going to now be in the way. So I do believe I'm going to have to use the old oil filter housing. But what I'll do is I'm going to put the new oil cooler on it, because I don't think there's any debris in this, because I think it was pretty self-contained, the damage. There was no evidence of oil around the rest of the engine. There was no oil in that gauze in the control valve there. So I'm pretty confident it will be okay. But as I've got a brand new one sat here, I am going to put the new cooler on the oil filter housing and give it a little clean whilst we're there. So I'm glad I picked up on that, because that would have been, yeah, not good. So I couldn't even put on the new oil cooler either, because the fittings for that were completely different too, as illustrated here. And the rebuild starting with the injector wiring loom, which went on absolutely fine. Although I did find that the fuel pressure switch is completely different, so I did have to switch that over as well. In goes the bracket for the alternator and AC compressor, and then it's just building up all the coolant hoses, where it's an absolute nightmare to get in the right order. Now, if it didn't look busy enough already, here we have the whole engine wiring loom, and we're going to start things off by sticking it right there. Now I'm going to bolt that on, and I'm just going to put it on a time lapse now and start building up, because this is taking a long time and I want to get the engine in the car today. And that didn't go to plan, because I had to take the inlet manifold off a couple of times, because I've realised it's completely different. So I think I got fed up, went home, and yeah, left the camera rolling. So as you can see, I've run into a problem. I've had to take part of the inlet manifold back off. And that is because this is part of the inlet manifold from the new engine that we're fitting. As you can see, look, what goes in here are bolts. But on the old one, look, they are studded. So they use studs and nuts, whereas the other one used just bolts, which is fine. So I was just going to say, well, that's fine. I'll just use the bolts from the new one. However, if you can look here, the holes are very slightly bigger on the other inlet manifold. And as a result of that, I was fitting the one with the smaller holes, and as a result of that, the bolts won't actually fit through there because the holes are too small. So I was had to take it all back off, and now I'm gonna have to swap the intake flap motor, put it back on the other inlet manifold, and use the other inlet manifold with the bigger holes, so the bolts will fit in. Honestly, there's so many little differences like that, it doesn't make sense. Just make them the same bloody size. Like, why make things so difficult? There's a few other smaller differences as well, which I haven't mentioned just because they're quite small. Like, I've had to change the fuel pressure sensor as well because this connector was actually completely different to the other one. So I just swapped that over. Also, the injector wiring, the clips where you like clip it on, it was the other way round, but it had hooks on both sides of it, so that didn't make a difference. There's just small differences like that. And also, it's a good job I did swap over the oil filter housing, because you can see this massive bracket here, look, which goes the whole length of the block. It would have definitely hit that because the angle would have been a lot more like this, so that definitely would have been in the way. So I'm glad I spotted that. Now, I was just going to swap over the intake flap motor and put it on the new inlet manifold, but it turns out the manifolds are different as well, so I had to drill out the holes on the old one. Oh, and look here, look, a substantial problem has arisen. So back again with another problem, and this time it's a lot of a bigger problem, and to rectify it is going to require some modification. So if you look at our CZGB block, our new block, you can see this tab here on the block, and that is for our engine mount. Now the RSQ3 block, here, look, so I'm just filming this upside down to show you because the block's upside down. But this is the RSQ3 block here. Note that connection here, or that thread here, which is on the other block, but it's unused. Now, this is where the tab went like that. And as you can see, this one doesn't have it. And here is that thread, look, on this block. You can see it's got it, but it's unused. Now, this is for a different type of engine mount. The RSQ3 one doesn't utilize this hole. It uses this one instead. However, this is massively in the way. And that is because I just went to fit the turbo and I couldn't get it on, and I couldn't work out why. And it all turns out it's because of the oil feed pipe here. Now, where it bolts onto the block is where this tab is right here. So it hits it here and it won't go on. And this pipe just is meant to go down there and just plug into the block here. But because of this corner bit that's in the way, it can't do it. Now, annoyingly, if I had the old the old oil feed pipe, I would have used it, but I modified it for a facelift turbo, didn't I? So I don't have it. Now, my only option would be to buy a new one from Audi at 140 quid. Or the other option is to cut this little bracket off here because we don't need it. We're going to be using this hole here. Now, if I'm honest, there we go, yeah, our bolt hole's lining up, so I think that will be okay. Obviously it's going to sit like that. Let me just get a stud on. So now that perfectly illustrates what my problem was before, and now we've obviously taken that away, problem should now be solved. Now, I hope there's no other differences to this engine whatsoever, because that was pretty much irreversible. The supply pipe bolted on fine along with the bracket, so I'm happy with how that sat. The return pipe and the coolant feed and return went on absolutely fine as well. Turbo bolted up fine as well. I did have to remove a few things a few times to get brackets in the right order, but we got there in the end, no issues. Right, now I've got engine's pretty much complete. Just need, before I can put the rest of the wiring in place, we need the gearbox on. I'm going to use the flywheel from the CZGB engine. It's exactly the same part number, so it's fine. And don't forget, this engine is actually half the mileage of the old one, so any parts that do carry over, I'll probably carry over just because of less mileage and therefore hopefully less wear. So I'm going to get it off the old Black & Decker workmate, put it back on the ground, get the gearbox transfer box on, start the motor on, finish a few bit more bits of wiring, get everything connected. The sump I am going to change, because obviously it's damaged, but it is holding oil, so I'm going to leave it just to start it, make sure it runs, and then we'll change it afterwards. There's a few more sensors I've got to change, which is underneath the engine, like this sensor here, but I obviously can't get to that until it is off that and into the car. So, right, I've left the engine balancing on the tyre. I'm going to try and pick up the gearbox with this. Yeah, I might not work. And there we go, look, we are located. And I'm not gonna lie, that was one of the most simplest gearbox attachments I've ever done. And that just goes to prove, work smarter, not harder. Right, turns out my jack was actually the thing in the way, so as soon as I move that, the whole thing now pivots again. Now, I'm pretty sure the last thing I need to do now is just replace this crank sensor, because this is the one off the old one and is damaged. So, looks like I can get to it all right. There we go, beautiful. So I'm just about there now and ready to turn it over, get some bit of oil pumping, just make sure it turns over, and then we'll connect the fuel lines and go for a start. Now, bearing in mind, I've never known this engine to run before. I did remove it from that crash damaged RS3 a while ago. Go click in the top right corner and watch how badly damaged that car was. So I don't know if this engine runs. I just have to really hope it does. I know it turns over, but that's as far as we got. And I know the oil pump's good because there's loads of oil around the engine when I disconnected it from this Skoda. Now, there are a few differences. Well, one main difference I found, that this plug, I carried this over from the this engine, and the plug's completely different, so I'm gonna have to do something about that. And also, I managed to break my alternator first thing this morning. And there she is. I was just, as I normally do all the time, I just put my screws in there and I just lightly tapping my hammer to bring these washers back. And I don't know if it's just old and brittle, but, oh no, that's not it, that's the block. That's part of the block. Well, anyway, it looks like that, but it just snapped clean off of there and rendered this alternator pretty much useless. So I've just cost me 160 quid. I've got a new one coming in a couple of days. That obviously means I couldn't finish the down here, putting the compressor on and also putting the alternator on, and there's a pulley that's got to go in there as well. And also I couldn't connect up the rest of my wiring. So we've got one there for the AC, one there for the alternator, and we have an alternator cable. This plug here goes to the oil sensor on the bottom of the sump, which is currently crushed, so I can't actually plug it in. But again, I don't need that to start. We are good to go. I'm going to plug my coils back in once I've turned it over. So, and last but not least, the car will not start without the big chunky earth from gearbox to chassis, which is here, look, so we just need to install this, and then that should be the last thing we need to do. Honestly, it's the routing of cables which is the hardest thing, because trying to get them all back in the exact same place is a bloody nightmare. So I'm going, oh, bloody hell. I'm gonna have to go through the window. I have to put my foot through. Oh my God. No. Put my foot on the brake and just turn it over. Oh, this is not, right, there we go. Right, I'm confident. Oh no, maybe not. Oh, it doesn't turn over. What have I forgot? Right, I think it was just a battery problem, so I've had it on charge overnight and I've just put the jump pack on it again. So fingers crossed, get me a big foot in here. It will now turn over. Oh, this is really awkward. Right. There we go. There we go. Right, now I'm going to plug in the fuel pump, plug in the spark plugs, and we're going to go for a start and see if this thing actually works. Right, so now we should get fuel to the engine. Yep, I can hear fuel. Just going to pump that a few times. I can hear it pumping. There you go, that's good. No leaks. Cool, right, we're about to now find out two things. A, whether this engine actually works, and B, whether it's compatible with the CTSA ECU. Fingers crossed, this all goes very well. Two things need to work here. Come on, let's go. Ooh. Oh! It runs and it doesn't knock. Ow. Sounds good. I think. Don't want to run it too long. Yeah. No. Sounds good. Engine sounds good. No knocking, no banging. Runs good. ECU seems to be working. I think this may be successful. Just knock that off. Right, that makes me very, very happy because we know we have a good engine. I was a bit skeptical because obviously the crash that it was in, but that seems to be running really nice, no knocks or bangs. And also the ECU seems to run it fine as well, which is good. So yeah, I think I'm going to end it there for today's video, guys. At least we got it running, that's the main thing, stress relieved there. So it's now just going to be a case of putting it all back together. And I mentioned earlier in the video that this car only had 310 horsepower from factory. And all I'm going to say is that's nowhere near enough. We need more power on this. Cheers, guys.